Welcome to Spur Central, where the cobblestones are slick with intrigue and the cosmos itself is winding up for war. I'm Brent Lindstrom, and today I'm pulling back the curtains on my new series debut, Hard-Boiled Cabbage, Book 1 of the GearLock series. You're not here for a standard book ad, you're here for a taste of gumshoe grit, whimsical wonder, and steam-driven swagger. Let's dive in. Through my love of stories, some of my novelist heroes like Raymond Chandler and Terry Pratchett seem to be whispering to me. I wanted to create a fantasy so steeped in noir grit and dark humor, something that brought together my childhood friends from the sword and sorcery TV shows I admired. And why not throw in a dash of steampunk brass? After all, life's too short for one flavor of crime drama. As a reader and a lifelong genre explorer, I love when boundaries blur. A hard-boiled PI cracking wise in a world of talking beasts. Tension like that between the familiar noir voice and the unexpected, well, that's where sparks fly. I want you to feel the cigarette smoke and volcanic ash in your lungs. Then chuckle when the nastiest creature in the room turns out to be a high society group of dogs playing poker at a speakeasy. Enter Spur Central, a gritty human city with layers of politics, dark alleys, and aging wooden facades. Above it all looms the great gears, cosmic machinery set to pit every sentient animal against each other in a war for ultimate ascension. Building this pre-steampunk realm and asking, what if every species felt they had the divine right to the top? Pigeons in power suits, cats as mafia dons, even the rats in the slums think they're next in line. Tension that drives your pulse from page one. I designed narrow alleyways, hidden doorways, and smoky speakeasies. Think Dickinson grime meets Jules Verne's inventors, all set in a very segregated Narnia where every corner bristles with possibility and danger. Now the star of the show, Dick Humar, a private eye too good for his own good. His partner, an irritable alley cat named Vinegar, whose glare could curdle milk. Humar's got exactly 3 things to live for: love, life, and money, and none of them much are going his way. When 2 desperate dames walk into his office, both definitely hiding secrets, he stumbles headfirst into a cosmic conspiracy that could get him killed. He wouldn't have it any other way. I wanted a hero who's gritty without being grim, clever without being cocky, and human enough that you root for him even when everything's falling apart. Hard-boiled fiction thrives on moral ambiguity. No one's spotless, least of all your narrator. But I also believe in clean storytelling. Yes, there's violence and plenty of cruelty, but never gratuitous. I'll let your imagination fill in those gaps. A dash of humor cuts tension like a broadsword. When my characters face down a roaring animal overlord, I want you to laugh and clench your butt cheeks at the same time. Balancing grit and heart kept me rewriting scenes until every line had a purpose, and every line took you someplace you'd love to visit, but hate to stay. Time for a taste. This is from Chapter 1, where we meet our detective friend for the first time.
Chapter 1. If only a fortune teller could predict the future. With a splash, Dick Humar lifted the squirming mess of cat from his wooden wash basin. Vinegar dripped from his hands as Humar held the tangled mop of fur tighter. Unlike other cats Humar had bonded over the years, Vinegar was mangy to the extreme. Nothing could have looked sadder, except for maybe Humar's dinner of boiled cabbage, which grew colder by the minute. He hated boiled cabbage, but such was his life, miserable and pathetic, forced from his home, all for doing the right thing. Some days he missed home, but being top dog in a stuffy kingdom had a way of wilting even the best of men. Only the strong-willed people ruled those places, while everyone else contented themselves to subjugation. Though by that account, strong-willed as he was, Humar should have been running Nebulon rather than hiding out here in Spur Central. What else was a fortune-teller to do? As hard as finding work had been here, at least the toughs were civilized people. Nobody discriminated against you for something as silly as telling the truth, like informing the king of Nebulon that his princely son was secretly courting an albino, or Buell as most people tended to call them. That should have earned Humar a commission, but the king had his pride to worry about. To him, Humar either knew too much about the prince's disgraceful romance, or he was lying through his teeth to damage their royal reputation. At least here, the rules made sense. All anyone of Spur Central cared about was how well you could roll with the punches and the kicks and the headbutts. The flexible floorboards creaked as Humar crossed the room and splashed vinegar onto the wobbly table, and vinegar's extra-long fur, as long as a man's hand, pooled in a puddle of wet, tangled fuzz, etching the cheap varnish with his claws. Humar didn't have to be a palsy to understand Vinegar's apprehension. Likewise, Vinegar could sense Humar's unspoken angst over the scratches in his most expensive piece of furniture, especially when it served so many purposes. But that didn't stop him from clawing at it anyway. The short wooden table, which doubled as his office desk, had a wobbly leg standing on one side like a sawed-off tree trunk for him to sit on, and a square chest of clothes on the other side for guests to sit. The table was small, with only room for a single drawer underneath facing the long side. On top, it was only big enough to fit his crystal ball. Was being the key word. He'd sold it to some kids who wanted it for a game of throwing. Money was tight, which led to the third thing he liked to use his table for, a kitchen table, whenever he could afford it, which was not this month. In fact, if he didn't get a good case soon, one that Vinegar couldn't botch, he might not have this apartment much longer either. Anyway, losing the crystal ball didn't matter. It didn't do anything. Why would it? This was a volcanic area. Crystal could be found all over the place. Most people didn't keep them as a centerpiece, which was why he liked it, because the oddity of it would distract his clients long enough from his hands as he sorted through their pockets. Now he'd have to find another way to con his visitors out of the little money they offered. After all, he was no prophet. Usually people didn't expect him to be either. But he had a knack for solving mysteries. And so what if some called it magic? If people were dumb enough to believe in magic, then they deserved to lose a little salt for his services. This wasn't the best way to make a living, but he was good at it, and nobody had threatened to run him out of town. They threatened to kill him, but that was everyday life in Spur Central. As for these toughs, those who dominated Spur Central, they were stronger than the average human, and they loved fighting more than anything. These were the zealots of the Beetledom. If Dick Humar couldn't make it here, he'd never get a chance anywhere else because he'd be dead. That could be a good thing. He'd be reborn into some pathetic family again and hopefully have a better run at life than he'd had this time around. But that wouldn't be him. Not for a long time. He was Dick Humar, the best fortune teller around. All he needed was one good case, a pocket full of money, and he'd be back on top again. But first things first, he had to take care of Vinegar. Vinegar howled, or rather meowed, as loud as ever. "Don't you dare! These floors and walls are thin as it is." Humar pinned his palsy partner against the table with a thick, calloused hand.
Or I thought you were supposed to get rid of that critter.
A voice called from below the cracks of the drafty floorboards that separated his apartment from the lower floor. Rain Hugrushi, the dentist, lived and practiced below Humar. Even Tufts had cavities.
Yeah.
Thelma Kaskroot added from the apartment next door as if she were in the same room. All his neighbors might as well have lived in his apartment.
You know, we isn't allowed pets in here, especially cats.
Her trademark high-heel boots clicked on the other side of the wooden wall. She was Humar's age, mid-40s, nosy and nasally, with enough interest in him to make him nauseous. "You tell anyone I got a cat up here, maybe I'll start telling people what you're putting in that hair jelly you sell," he warned.
Aye.
Kaskroot gasped as if Humar had slapped her in the face. Many would consider a cat living here as disgraceful, and Humar could live with being called disgraceful. After all, since he and Vinegar were bonded palsies, they were stuck with each other. But if Tufts knew about his palsy bond, well, it'd be bad for business.
You won't hear me complaining to anyone.
Rain Hugrushi said through the floorboards.
Yeah, me neither. In fact, I never even said a thing.
Kaskroot's voice faded, so she must have gone into one of her farther rooms. No doubt she found something shiny, like a polished shield, and lost herself in her own reflection. That woman. Vinegar tried squirming away, but Humar held firm with his left hand as he reached for his boot dagger with the right. "I don't know how many times I've warned you. We mess up here and we get killed." He actually tolerated Vinegar most of the time. The cat was good at sneaking around, hiding and spying. The only problem, well, the biggest problem, was that Vinegar's level of self-importance was a little too big to fit in his hairy body. The cat's cocky attitude made him miss critical details, like how he never remembered his tail. He had given them away on more than one occasion. At least this time it only cost him a paying client, but a single paying client when you were limping by on boiled cabbage was a big deal. Plus a mistake that here among toughs could easily cost more than a meal. It could cost them their lives. Vinegar's eyes widened at the sight of Humar's boot dagger and his claws spread wider. "This is your own fault," Humar said, tightening his grip. "And if you put one claw into my skin, I'll send you down to Hugrushi. He'll take his teeth puller to each and every one of your claws." Vinegar retracted his claws a little. From within his throat, or chest, or wherever cats grumble from, came Vinegar's anti-purr. You didn't need to be a palsy to understand Vinegar was unhappy. Well, what did Vinegar expect? Humar was nothing if not a man of his word. He gave Vinegar one more cold stare.
I hate you, Diku Heartless.
Vinegar communicated through a combination of noise and body language that only a cat palsy or another cat could understand.
I wish I never met you as a kitten.
Humar was not one to trifle with empty threats, and Vinegar understood this more than most. Whatever Kaskroot put in her hair products, it was nothing compared to how Hugrushi performed dentistry, so Vinegar wisely sheathed his claws even further. "Better," Humar said. Then, without further warning, he slammed the dagger down, severing Vinegar's tail. It was half a finger width closer to the cat's rump than he'd intended. Vinegar screamed in a "yow, yow" sort of way. Everyone here was pretty used to the sound. In fact, Hugrushi's current client also screamed in a similar "ow, yow, I'm going to kill you" sort of a way. Humar should have seen it coming, since he only warned Vinegar not to scratch. The ball of fur squirmed around and sunk his teeth deep into Humar's hand. The dark hair on the back of his palm began to channel rivulets of blood across his darkly tanned skin. Humar lifted the cat by the soft flesh of his punctured palm. With his free hand, he tried to pry the fangs off when the door to his apartment office opened. Humar stood still and let his hand fall to his side, with Vinegar still attached to one of them. Humar's thick-barreled chest proudly protruded, and the extra barrel in his belly sucked in as tight as he could pull it. Business time. Blood dripped from Vinegar's tail just as often as it dripped from Humar's hand, but he couldn't do anything about that at this moment. In the doorway stood a silhouette against the light from the setting sun as it angled up the stairs and filled the hallway. Thin wrists, nearly hidden by brown leather gloves, closed the door, suggesting that this potential client was a woman. With the sunlight now gone, the shadows before her found contrast, though not much. From her ankles to her face, she was all but hidden under a dark brown coat. She took 2 cautious steps closer.
Here's the real scoop. Hard-Boiled Cabbage hit shelves on March 2nd, 2026. You'll find it in print, ebook, and audiobook, so no matter how you like to read, I've got you covered. By the way, if you're a book reviewer with over 100 subscribers, drop your details on my website. I've set aside early copies for folks who can help spread the word. Whether you're a mystery fanatic, a fantasy explorer, or a steampunk tinkerer, Spur Central has something for you. I'd love to hear what excites you most. Humar's snark, the cosmic stakes, Vinegar's attitude. Leave a comment below. Hit like if you're down for a hard-boiled adventure with a twist, and subscribe for content where you can get to know me, and maybe I can get to know you too. Hey, we all have a story to tell. Thank you for joining me on this journey to Spur Central. Until next time, keep your eyes peeled and your battle hammers ready.